r/ask Reddit. Parents who regretted having kids, what do you wish you had known before? I don't regret having kids. But I do regret not knowing the following before I had kids. 1. Travel. A lot. Everywhere. The farther the better. Spend your money on it. Use your time. 2. Don't brush off school districts and schools when you buy a house. It may not matter now, but it may be the things that changes your entire world in a few years. Don't be selfish because it's a great price and you love the location now. But the schools are stuff. Don't do that. You will be in a bad place later. 3. Make sure your spouse will really, truly, co-parent with you. My cousin's husband would change her son's diapers but not their daughters because, ew. That's weird. Figure it out before you're like 10 years into marriage and decide it's the right time. 4. Consider your family dynamic. Maybe you're just fine on your own with little help as an adult. But when you have kids, you need a village more than you'd like. Working with kids that constantly get sent home sick and need to go to the doctor. Special half days at school and long school breaks. If it is just up to you and your spouse to take time away for all of that, you better have an understanding job that provides ample time and/or very close family and friends that are willing to take kids. Pick them up. Do overnights. The whole deal. My parents are in Florida half the year and my in-laws work full-time. It's way more tough than I thought. I constantly feel like I'm going to get fired because I'm taking another unexpected day off because my kid can't go to daycare because they're sick. 5. If you really want to have kids, you better consider the fact that even though you feel pretty rich as a single person, or maybe a 2-income household, that your area better have good, affordable daycare. Or you or your spouse better be planning to stay home. In order to afford a kid or more. I know lots of people who make good money who were shocked to figure out that basically they can only afford to have one kid because the cost of childcare or the cost of staying home was so great that they could barely afford it. I live in a place where daycare is very affordable. I have 3 kids and we pay over $30 a year for daycare. And that's just the tuition. This is not your parents' time, it's different out there now. 6. Closing parenthesis. This one got me the most. How independent, selfish, lazy are you? Really? I'm what I considered to be a relatively well-adjusted only child. I'm used to my space. My own time. Being independent. I'm also pretty lazy. When I come home on a weekday, I like to rest. Watch a lot of TV. Hang out. When I had kids, it was a huge change. Someone needs you all the damn time. It is unrelenting. You never have your own anything anymore. You spend almost all of your waking time that your children are there tending to your children's needs. You beat yourself up for not being good enough at it. For being pissed about how miserable it is sometimes. For hating it. You will hate it sometimes. You need to very, very, very seriously consider your stamina for caring for others and putting everyone else before yourself. All the time. Foster a puppy together. Puppies are painfully clingy, need to go out frequently, and have the same general schedule as a baby: eat, poop, play, sleep, repeat every 2 hours. If you're the only one taking out the puppy at 2 a.m. so she doesn't pee in the house, you'll be the only one changing a crying baby's diapers at 2 a.m. Daycare tuition really cannot be understated. My 2 kids only go 2 to 3 days per week. And we paid $20,000 last year alone. My wife and I want to have another kid, but they really are just so ducking expensive it's insane, so we might have to be done. Also, once they are in grade school, you will still likely have to pay for after school care for several years. Which is not cheap either. Love my kids to death and definitely do not regret them at all. But I am afraid if we had another that would change. My mother made it clear to my sister and I that she hadn't wanted us. That I was the product of my dad's unrelenting badgering and that my sister had been an oops. She wasn't a good mom. At all. She screamed about everything. You never knew what would set her off. My parents divorced and we went on to be raised by my stepmom, not without her faults, but she's a saint. This woman didn't technically want us either. She hadn't chosen to get pregnant with us, but she treated us just like her own. She planned, and paid for, with my dad, my wedding. Things got better and my real mom is a good grandma now, but let me tell you, hearing you're not wanted as a child, even in passing, even as a joke, can shape someone's entire life and self-worth. If this is you parents, don't you dare ever say it where they can hear you. Let me just ask them. One sec. Amazing first comment. They may not be proud of you, but I am. Don't have kids when you struggle with mental illness. I upvoted this because my depression is one of the main reasons I choose to not have them. I don't think I can handle the stress while going through non-functioning times, nor would I want them to inherit the gene. I've had depression since I was 15. Got pregnant at 26 and off the meds. When I was on them, life was amazing. Had to quit my job 4 months into my pregnancy because I could barely make out of bed and just felt like crying the whole shift. 3 years late, I still suffer through the worst depression I've ever experienced. Have thought about killing myself or leaving my child and husband many times since giving birth. Children are expensive and without my income I can't afford to pay out of pocket like I used to for therapists and psychiatrists. My Medicare sucks. I've been trying since October to find a doctor, but it seems impossible. Daycare tuition really cannot be understated. My 2 kids only go 2 to 3 days per week. And we paid $20,000 last year alone. My wife and I want to have another kid, but they really are just so ducking expensive, it's insane, so we might have to be done. Also, once they are in grade school, you will still likely have to pay for after school care for several years. Which is not cheap either. Love my kids to death and definitely do not regret them at all. But I am afraid if we had another that would change. Throw away for obvious reasons. I always knew from a young age that I didn't want children. My family is all very strict Catholic Hispanics and basically picked who I was going to marry from a young age. Fortunately, I liked the guy, so we did end up married at 19. I was very honest about not wanting kids. He was okay with that. Our families were not. I ended up pregnant even though I was taking birth control. More on that in a minute. Didn't notice the missed periods because the type of birth control I took let you skip periods. By the time I knew I was pregnant, I was 5 months along, which is too late for an abortion. Had the baby. Found out while in the hospital I ended up pregnant because our families ordered fake birth control online and replaced my pills with the fakes. Needless to say, my husband and I were pissed. I also had horrific postpartum depression but did the best I could. My husband took up drinking heavily to deal with the stress, and over day he just never came home. Haven't heard from him since. The baby was still an infant at that point, 4 months, and I made the decision to put her up for adoption and move away. Everyone says it's different when it's your own kid. Everyone says the first time you hold your baby you have an instant bond. Everyone says it's the most amazing, important thing a woman will ever do. None of that was true for me. I'm in my mid-30s now and my daughter and her family made contact with me about 7 years ago. We talk regularly and I go visit for her birthday and some holidays. She knows the whole story, and while I'm sure she doesn't really understand, she's only 13, she at least gets it a little. If you know you don't want children, and have never wanted children, don't listen to people who tell you that you're wrong and will change your mind. I'm trying to get my tubes tied to make sure it never happens again, but haven't had luck finding a doctor who's willing to since I'm unmarried and under 40. Filed for divorce years ago, and since nobody could find him, it went through the same way it does for a missing person. We really need to stop acting like women don't understand their own bodies and wants. That's all, folks. Thanks for watching. Remember to smash the like button if you enjoyed the video.